given the world, the origin of humanity, and of course, we have a shared history and a shared present. That history is characterized by brutal elements. Yesterday we celebrated the independence of the Congo. We had slave trade, colonialism, and then there was independence. And the question is, how do we move the past? How do we recognize the current present? And how do we move forward? I tell my personal journey because I do think, as one of our, Mr. Cole of the trade union, European Trade Union, told us, we should have the ability to listen to one another and understand what's not being said. And there is a beauty in the people, in the in-betweens, the diaspora, as we heard, people like Zingiswa Losi, who came from like students, military, and then going up to the top, representing unheard voices. And that's the spirit I would like to invite you here. So this is the in-between where we celebrate our common future, which starts with a reflection on who we are. Can we move beyond this whole notion of development? And the question is, who is developing who? And it's tricky, especially with the climate change and green transition, because at Africa Days we celebrate this notion of shared prosperity. And what is the role of European policymakers, progressive voices, in making sure that we realize this dream? So this is a challenge beyond the beautiful words that we will be sharing here today. So to do that, I'd like to open with an appreciation of the presence of the Commissioner of Energy and Housing. You have been in politics, I think for most of your career. You have been member of the Parliament in Denmark, where you're also Minister of International Development as well. So from that perspective and your position, it's good to know that your topics has been raised today. And we are curious to hear your view on this future of Africa and Europe and how to move beyond the past and recognize the present. The Commissioner will have to leave soon, but we hope to have the opportunity to have a small engagement and exchange. Please.
Thank you so much. So I will have to start by correcting something that was said that was wrong. And that is, Udo said he was not a nice guy. That is not true. And I know that because we used to be colleagues in this house when I was a member here. And also worked together with several other occasions. I used to serve, as you said, in the Danish government in different positions. One of them was Minister for Development Aid and Development Cooperation. And actually the last job that I did before I got my present role was to write a new strategy for Denmark's collaboration with African countries. So originally we called it an Africa strategy, but then when we started writing it and I went to 16 different countries, I found out, we need to be aware that this is indeed very, very different countries. And although, of course, there are some values that are overreaching, we need to make sure, just as in Europe, we have the European Union, but we also have individual member states. That's a very important point. But nonetheless, it gave me the opportunity to visit 16 African countries within a year and a half. And I met so many inspiring people and made so many good networks and connections, and saw so much opportunity and hope, but of course also a lot of challenges. So I bring that with me now, also of course in the job that I have now. Energy, which is my portfolio here in the Commission, is actually a theme that fits very well into the theme of today's closing session, shaping our common future. In Europe, our energy future will be one of transition. As we drive forward with the decarbonization of our economy our energy trade with Africa will evolve, moving from fossil fuels to electricity, green hydrogen, and critical raw materials. We are committed to making this a transition that is fair, coordinated, and carefully managed. That is why, through our partnership with the Beyond Oil and Gas Alliance, we support their work on the transition away from fossil fuels with countries like Nigeria and Kenya, so that they can plan their own transition and not be entirely dependent on volatile global markets. With funding support from this alliance, both of these countries have launched programs to map out the challenges and opportunities of a clean transition. We are also helping fossil fuel exporters to evolve into clean energy exporters, thereby securing a stronger future in a changing energy system. For example, we recently signed a €690 million financial package with Egypt. This package is focused on integrating solar and wind power, improving grid reliability, and supporting the country's role as a clean energy hub for the Mediterranean region. When it comes to critical raw materials, Africa holds significant reserves of metals and minerals that are essential for clean technologies. It is vital that these resources are treated responsibly so that they can drive the clean energy transition across the globe, while also delivering economic development across Africa. With this in mind, the EU has entered into partnership agreements on raw materials with 5 African countries. These arrangements are based on fairness, transparency, and delivering benefits that are both mutual and sustainable, because Africa should not simply be an exporter of raw materials while value creation happens elsewhere. Instead, we must support local value chains. This means processing and manufacturing locally, increasing innovation and growing entrepreneurship. This is not just about fairness. It is also about building resilient partners with whom trading relations can prosper for years to come. When it comes to Africa's energy future, we are not simply talking about a transition. We are talking about a transformation. By harnessing its solar power alone, Africa has the potential to generate up to 7,900 gigawatts of energy. For context, the total renewable capacity of the entire world right now is just 5,000 gigawatts. So the potential for solar alone in Africa is much bigger than the collected capacity of all renewables in the world right now. It's quite fantastic when you think about it. It also has huge potential for wind power, green hydrogen, and geothermal energy, as well as significant critical mineral resources. And by unlocking this potential, we can also unlock jobs, innovation, and economic growth across the continent. However, we are falling short. Despite having thousands of gigawatts of potential clean power, Africa's installed renewable capacity currently sits just above 70 gigawatts. And despite its abundant energy resources, Africa currently attracts less than 3% of global energy investments. Investors face a number of challenges like high capital costs, regulatory uncertainties, geographical barriers, and supply chain constraints. And partly because of these challenges, energy is not flowing across Africa the way that it should. Therefore, in addition to transitioning and transforming the energy landscape in Africa, we also need to focus on the nearly 600 million people who today lack access to reliable electricity. And close to 1 billion lack access to clean cooking. That's 4 out of every 5 people. This lack of access has negative impacts on public health and the environment. It holds back education, entrepreneurship, and gender equality. It also prevents businesses from adopting modern and efficient technologies that could increase productivity and support economic prosperity. Turning this situation around is not just in the interest of Africa. It's in the interest of Europe and the entire world. Because Africa can become a global powerhouse, generating clean energy for the international market while also generating economic returns for its own people. Therefore, the EU is committed to helping Africa achieve its full potential. Under the Global Gateway and together with EU member states, the European Commission has launched the Africa-EU Green Energy Initiative. This initiative aims to support the transformation of Africa's energy system from continental level to local level. From a continental perspective, we are working with the African Union to develop a continental power system master plan, along with a single electricity market for Africa. The ambition is that one grid for one continent, ultimately connecting 1.3 billion people across borders. At regional level, we are supporting investments in interconnectors. For instance, the EU has provided 30 million euros to support an interconnector linking Zambia, Tanzania and Kenya, enabling the rollout of almost 600 kilometers of power line. This will enhance electricity trade and regional integration. At national level, our investment focuses on strengthening the electricity grids and transmission lines. For example, we are helping the construction of hydroelectric power plants in Cameroon, which is expected to increase national electricity production capacity by 30%.
The Commissioner, you need to leave in 15 minutes.
Yes.
And since Udo thought I'm a nice guy, but I really need to really use this opportunity to also hear from people who are here.
Sure.
So would you have conclude so that we can...
My conclusion is 3 pages, so I leave it at I leave it at this.
2 things from your contribution. Thank you. First, for an alignment, connection with Africa. Actually, 3 things. Second, I hear a positive perspective from the European perspective, and I couldn't help but notice the word help. And we have had different sessions the past 2 days where we also had some critical reflection. So I would like to give Mrs. Zingiswa Losi from South African workers. Now I'm from the Union. Come again?
From Congress of South African Trade Unions, COSATU.
Fantastic.
Yes. Just a question. What did you hear from what the commissioners shared? And maybe also bring us to what you have tried to share with us the past 2 days.
Can I just thank you so much, firstly, for having me. Oh. My apologies. Thank you again for having me, and thank you to the Commissioner. I think I just want to quickly, and as I'm listening, just deal with 6 issues for us if we're talking about shaping the future, a common future. I want to deal with one issue on trade and industrialization, and I'm picking on the discussions that we have had even on the last session now, since we have started this conversation yesterday. I want to say that from the workers' perspective in Africa, in the global south, is that Europe needs our African strategic minerals for its green transition, and Africa needs European investments, technology and skills. And so instead of shipping lithium, manganese, platinum, and all the rare earth out of Africa, we strongly believe that we should be able to build battery plants. We should be able to manufacture electric vehicle components and renewable energy, of course, and make Africa a manufacturing hub. On the energy transition, as we shape a common future, in South Africa, as an example, coal workers and coal-dependent communities fear losing their livelihoods. And so a genuine partnership in shaping a common future is one where Europe helps finance new industries in those communities. And it's just a discussion.
That was just one point, right? Given the time, would you allow me to give the Commissioner, or do you have another very critical point before he leaves, so that he can take along or maybe respond?
No, maybe let me allow the Commissioner to come in, because I thought we were discussing the shaping the future.
That's very clear, yes. Because we will have continued the conversation once he leaves. We're also a member of the Parliament here.
Yes.
But before that, I would also like to give his honourable member, Fifi Fiavi Kwetey from Ghana. He's the current General Secretary of National Democratic Congress, and he has served in the Ghanaian Parliament, former Minister of Transport and Agriculture, and also Minister of Finance. And yesterday, he gave us a bold vision that it really starts in Africa. And yeah, and this whole idea of equitable partnership, he gave his perspective on the importance of culture shift. But I would like you to give the opportunity also to bring us with what you have observed and how you listen to the Commissioner.
Thank you very much, and I want to once more acknowledge all of us who are here, and to thank the S&D team for making our visit absolutely wonderful. Thank you, Udo, and the team for making it so great. I did come in a little late, so I couldn't pick the very beginnings of it, but I did pick the final part of it. And I think generally, if I understood him pretty well, what he's trying indirectly to say is that there is massive opportunity that Africa holds as far as energy is concerned, in terms of the renewable capacity in Africa, which is true. And I think I just want to re-emphasize what my sister from South Africa rightly said, that really what it is we need to be looking at more is to see how we can work together. Africa has resources, Africa has the people. What Africa needs at the moment will be much more of the investment. And so Europe and Africa, we should be looking at how to collaborate in order to ensure that those resources are optimized to the benefit not just of Africa, but also of Europe and also of the world. And that background of appreciating that we need to be looking forward to a world where cooperation becomes the way to go, not just extraction, but making sure that resources are optimized to the benefit of all of us as humanity. I think that is the underlying theme I want to emphasize again. Yes.
Yes, thank you very much. So we have used this word of partnership, and yesterday we used different metaphors. So, Mr. Commissioner, what's your reflection on this contribution? And I would like to make the question a bit sharper and also reflect about power dynamics, because when a relationship, someone has more power, you can define power in many different forms, it affects the outcomes, even if you have the common goal. So I'd like to hear your thought on that particular point, given the fact that you are also someone who have been engaging in Africa cooperation also in your previous positions.
Yes, so I think that's a very good question and a very important discussion. So the ministry that I used to lead in Denmark was in the old days called the Ministry of Development Aid. But many years ago, we changed that name to Development Cooperation, because that is how partnerships should be founded. It's not about just one party giving something to the other. It's about helping in a mutual, beneficial way with decision-making powers on both sides, with respect, with the ambition to form closer ties in the future on many different areas. And I think that needs to be the basis for everything we do. And actually it relates quite closely to your excellent points on what I would call the need for just transition. Because yes, I think we can probably all agree that we need to move away from using coal as a source of energy, because if we don't, then climate change will worsen. And where does that hit the hardest? Well, that's also the most vulnerable countries on the planet, not only in Africa, but also other places in the world. So we have a moral imperative, all of us, to fight climate change. But for the people actually working in those sectors, the fossil sectors, we need to make sure that they don't become the losers. And yes, we all know the numbers that if you do a green transition right, then in fact that will create more jobs than you will lose. But the problem is it's not always for the same people. And if you lose your job working in a coal mine region and then 2,000 kilometers away in a different city, in a different sector, different people are getting jobs. Well, that's okay for the country maybe overall, but it's not okay for the people you're talking about. So we need to be very, very mindful that when we transition away, it's not only a technical issue, it's also an issue of taking care of humans.
I would like to ask how we get there, but I will also go to the audience. Do we have Beauty somewhere? I would like to hear your perspective on this, because you've also provided some interesting perspective on this topic in different occasions, especially. I'll just hear your thoughts and maybe contribution before the commissioner leaves. What should he do starting tomorrow?
Okay, I think starting tomorrow, these economic partnership agreements between Africa and the EU should be made more binding, and the terms of the agreement should be more specific. Okay, because like I said before, it's good to advocate for local value addition, but currently Africa doesn't have that capacity for 100% local value addition. So I suggest a graduated form of local value addition, and a timeline should be specified. Like you could start with 30% local value addition in the first 5 years, and then it's graduated upwards as we build the capacity for industrialization and processing of these local minerals, because that is actually where the tax justice lies. And I would define tax justice as industrial justice, basically. Thank you.
And maybe to make it specific, I also understood you want Europe to meet its own standards. Like, could you make it specific with numbers when it comes to local value creation?
I cannot be specific with numbers. It depends on each country's capacity. Because, like we heard yesterday, Africa is not a country. Africa is a continent. So it depends on each particular African country's capacity. So, and it also depends on the political will of the African leaders there. They know the issues they have. Each African country know the capacity they have. And they will decide how many percent are we going to start with. But I need it to be binding. I need it to be part of the agreement. And I need there to be consequences when those terms are not met. I do not want to leave it to promises or political will. Thank you.
Thank you very much, which also referred to an interesting roundtable that took yesterday place, also with the young generation on tax justice, on this generational debt that the young people are having, and also a message to European politicians when making these deals, make sure that these voices, that the perspective of young people, of women, this idea of green transition, it's taken seriously. But I would like also, Mr. Fifi Kwetey, you mentioned that it's African leaders themselves, because you described yesterday a leadership crisis. How would you respond? What is it in for Europe to actually support Africa with this whole idea of value creation? Because why should Europe do that? Is it not to Africans themselves to actually make sure that they create these conditions and engage in these equitable partnerships?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, charity certainly must begin at home. I mean, that is a point I started making yesterday, that we definitely need to look within and ensure that some of the things that we didn't do very well in the past, we start addressing them. We start taking responsibility, making sure that leadership shows far more desire to look at the long-term interests of the continent of our people. And then we are in a position, therefore, to be able to attract the right kind of cooperation and the right kind of support coming from without, in order to be able to.
But why would Europe contribute to this idea of equitable partnership and creating value? What is it in for Europe?
I think generally, as I said earlier, we need to appreciate that we are in this together. We are one planet. Gone are the days where the thinking constantly was it is us versus them. The future increasingly must be looking more at one family, one group of people facing the same conditions. When COVID happened, you saw exactly what happened immediately. The whole globe was affected. That is the perspective. I think that really is what the lasting lesson from COVID should be, that we face existential threats together.
Yes.
So the resources of the world must be looked at the resources of the world, and optimizing them should constantly be seen as not just for one group, but for all of us ultimately.
Yes, a shared fate, which was mentioned yesterday. AI, climate change affects both Europeans and Africans, so this should be a foundation for solidarity. And for you, the same question, what is it in for Europe to actually support African creating these value creations in these deals and cooperation?
Can I answer it differently and say that I think given what Beauty raised and the response from also Honorable Fifi, is that success will not be measured by the number of agreements that we sign. Because I think in the previous discussion that we had the privilege of being, we're talking about the people. We're saying it must be a just transition because it must be about the people, leaves no one behind. So I want to say in answering that, for us as workers, it will be measured by whether workers in Johannesburg, in Brussels, in Nairobi, in Sao Paulo, Brazil, enjoy secure jobs. They have safe workplaces. They have strong social protection, and they have dignity at work. So in all what we say and do and what we come together as a EU and African Union, it must be about the people and how that changes their lives in reality. No worker left behind, no community left behind, jobs created, no jobs destroyed in what we do, and also accountability from our African governments.
Yeah, which is a point that has been mentioned a few times. So it's starting from home, but then engaging on an equal foot. So, Commissioner, you need to leave, but for you, some last remarks. How did you listen?
No, I think these are very, very good points. I very much like the idea of having a timeline and having it structured, and this is how we would do it in the perfect world. This is how we should do it. Unfortunately, this is very, very difficult because, yes, just as Africa is not one continent, it's a lot of different countries with a lot of different values, and there's things that combine, but there's also things that are different. Same goes for Europe. And I will even, to complicate things, say that even in a country like the one that I know best, where I'm from, Denmark, we've been one of the countries in the world that's been allocating most development aid for 30, 40 years. But even in my country, when the governments change, how much is allocated goes up and down, of course, but sometimes even more importantly, the values change. So some government might focus on working with business. So others might focus on working with NGOs. Others might focus on climate change, gender equality. And it's not that there's anything wrong with any of those objectives. They're all very good. But if you change too often, then you don't see the actual benefits and the actual results, because the networks that are being made, the partnerships that are being formed, risk not getting the time that they need. So this is why I think it's so valuable to have a meeting like the one that you've been having these days, and I'm fortunate enough to be able to participate in here now, because it's about forming these alliances to make long-term commitments. So thank you so much for allowing me to participate here. I have to run now, unfortunately. I'm already a little bit late, but thank you so much.
Thank you very much,
Thank you.
Commissioner.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
that's a call for internal dialogue. Also in Europe, as not only Africa needs an internal dialogue, but also Europeans on how do you make sure that you have these sustainable partnerships. I think, Mr. Bullmann, that's a good moment to give the colleagues from the Parliament a word. Mr. Tarquinio from Italy, you mentioned yesterday about Europe being in transition, also when it comes to the aging continent, and the importance of Africa in this transition. Today it was about energy. I'm curious to hear your thoughts and your view actually on how to shape this common future.
Io parlo in italiano, Chair.
I'll speak Italian, says the Speaker.
Ma per la mia esperienza...
With my experience, what I've seen over years from a different point of view in terms of decision making, looking back, the big issues that have come up is the end of the mining era. This is something that's been raised from a number of different points of view over these talks. In terms of extraction, things have changed. Talking about the mining economy, initially we just talked about material resources, natural, the infinite wealth of Africa overall. With time, what's been clearer is a more ambivalent relationship with human resources, with people, which is both an opportunity and a threat. The story that has come out in our part of the world in terms of the African continent is partly we've heard from the extreme right and very dangerous points of view from what were normally traditional democratic forces in terms of not so much precious human resources, but apparently, and there's an invasion. That is the dominant narrative from those who are successful in public communications, and they use modern tools to put across that point of view. And I think with the strengths that we have, the personal strengths that we have, we need to stand together, and we have the responsibility to put forward a different point of view to fight against this current in these very difficult times. What we have been able to do amongst ourselves, with the relationships we have, interpersonal relationships, we've brought down barriers that separate each other, and that's what we need to do in order to get peace and well-being. Now we're not saying to ourselves that we need to put up the barriers with the rest of the world. I'm Italian. The story of Italy is that there's been emigration from Italy to the African shores, the south of Africa, from the end of the 1800s and 1800s to the start of the 1900s, and there was a lot of new things that we saw in terms of crops. Italian cookery we're very famous for, and that came about because from Africa, and that is a sign of how we can change, because exchange goes two ways. But at the moment, we need to look at this dominant narrative that's flying in the face of that, and that means rigidity, and that means that there is a bellicose relationship amongst us with the far right, with the political, legislative war. Udo Bullmann knows what we're talking about, having been on the IMCO committee. We need to make sure that things don't take a warlike turn, that we need to, and this is to do with stopping people moving between the shores of the Mediterranean. What we don't want is bloodshed. This is becoming more and more clear with what our chair has been talking about, demographic change on both sides of the Mediterranean, and with the depth that leads to. I might have gone a bit philosophical there, but there's a big political issue, the defining one of our days, and we need to have an exemplary role with other systems in the rest of the world. And what we have here, what we're seeing in the Mediterranean, if you look at all the directions that we get from Lapland to Europe and so on, we look to the Far East, that the future looking, the Pacific. But here is where decisions are made whether humanity can live together and have a shared development, and that's our responsibility, reciprocal responsibility. That's what I was saying yesterday. I'm a person that believes that it's up to the political classes of both continents to build our future as brothers on those two continents, vertical continents becoming dependency with the route that you've laid out with new technologies, green technologies. I'm Italian. My government has set up the MEP plan. It isn't at all linked to Eleni Matei, the big energy companies, having relationships with countries, respecting the interests of those countries in having the full advantages possible, as opposed to legalized robbery. The right wing's approach is dramatically different. Our responsibility needs to be convincing amongst ourselves with our citizens on this side of the Mediterranean, because otherwise we'll get a paradigm shift if we let them. I've gone on a bit, but that's what we need to work on.
Thank you very much. I hear this also as a warning that when we speak about a common future, we should also be aware of internal forces that can stand this idea of of shared humanity in the way. I would like to move also to your colleague to hear a short reflection on how you have been listening to the conversation. Please do.
I continue where my colleague has ended, because he was talking about the citizens, and we have to reach out to the citizens. So it's very important to communicate on the level of young people, communicate on the level of women's organizations, and on the level of unions. I'm a member of the Committee on Culture and Education. So creativity in African countries is immense, and it really can contribute, and it's an economy, and it's a job opportunity, and Europe can benefit as well as, it's now not a one way, as African countries can benefit from this exchange. And whatever we talk about energy, security, common people have to know about it, have to feel about it. It must be feelable for the people, for the citizens. And when I mentioned education, take the Erasmus Plus for an example. We are trying to bring more Africans into Europe for opportunity of educational programs. But on the other side, it's very important that Europeans, young Europeans, can experience Africa, African countries, African developments. I'm coming from Austria, and I've mentioned it last night. There are stereotypes still about Africa. They don't know how dynamic it is, how young and what power there is behind. And Africa days are not over after this discussion, because we have the film We Shall. And I think this is a perfect example about empowerment. And this is a perfect example to show European young people what is happening in Africa, what Gen Z is. And it's another hint that cultural and creative offers like a film can make the difference and can get into the mind and hearts of Europeans, and especially young Europeans. And if you get young people from Africa and Europe as well, then we have won.
Wow. Nobody could summarize the importance of including other voices At least that is a very good summary, which also aligns with the vision of these Africa Days, also the perspective of young people. And this is actually, speaking of philosophical, since our previous speakers dared to give us a broader vision. Let me start with the Belgian philosopher Chantal Mouffe, who reflects a lot on agonism. This whole idea that we need conflict as a way to understand where we come from. So, because what you described in Europe is also happening in Africa. Democracy is being attacked by these populist leaders who actually have managed to listen to the voices of young people, have been not listened to by the previous elite. And in Europe, we see the same. What is being described is actually about people feeling, not really included. There is a Belgian political scientist who studied Italy as a case and demonstrates how when there's no public services, people tend to choose for populist government. So what I hear here is also a need to create this shared reality where people feel like they are fully included. Yesterday you gave us a vision, especially also young people, and on the importance of culture, which relate to what they've contributed. I think this is a good opportunity also to hear from you on how does this common future looks like.
Yeah, thank you very much. I think the final part of, let's say, the essence of it all is that we share a common future. I completely believe that it was not an accident that Europe and Africa had a destiny, in the past. Let's just say this way, it could have been a much better destiny. But the important thing about life is constantly looking at the past with a view to learning what lessons are in order to be able to make the future better. I think we have an opportunity to be able to build a future that is a future from, picking the lessons of the past. And Europe in particular needs to appreciate that this is a great opportunity to be able to work with that continent of Africa again, but this time not an Africa that is being looked upon as a place just for resources, but an Africa that is looked upon as a place of potentials, and therefore a place whose potential needs to be maximized for the fulfillment of the continent itself and also of all other continents. I believe there's not an accident that somehow Africa has been given, let's get the greatest natural resources. It's also not an accident at all that Africa at the moment looks like the continent that has what you call the greatest young people in terms of meaning the future of the world lies in Africa. All these things are clearly showing that the rest of the world, especially Europe, because Europe had the opportunity. As I sit here, I would say the part of the country I come from was originally a colony of Germany. So my good brother here, Germany was in charge of the parts of Ghana where I come from. Togo and part of Volta region was Ghana. Then you have England that was in charge of the rest of the Gold Coast then, that is now Ghana. I would say I happened to school across the border, so I had a francophone, should I call it a francophone background as well. The primary school I attended was a Catholic school, so it was actually full of Italian. I was actually baptized by an Italian priest. So you could see the configuration and the way, destiny brought us together. And I think this is a clear opportunity for us to appreciate that we share a common destiny. And I'd like to close on the particular note that he just closed on, that especially the young people of Africa, the young people of Europe, there is a clear destiny, a clear opportunity to be able to learn from the past in order to be able to build a future. That clearly will be a great future for the world. And as I said yesterday, we've in the past thought about the world in terms of us versus them. It was a complete issue of competition. But I think we should now be looking at the world, and not from the lens of competition, but much more of cooperation, collaboration, appreciating that the resources of the world have to be used to the benefit of the world. And if we do that, I believe there is enough for the world as a whole to be fulfilled and to be happy.
Thank you very much. Which is also, you missed my opening where I shared this concept of an Afropolitan. And your lived experience is the embodiment of that, studying in France and being this in-between person and the ability to understand different perspectives and what has been shared about the diaspora yesterday, and which I think also align extremely well with this idea of education as an exchange to create spaces for lived realities. I'll take this as a very important takeaway for these Africa Days, the ability to meet one another as human beings with shared needs. And of course, as you mentioned, with also, shared future, actually you mentioned, with common goals beyond the we and the they. This is also a good opportunity to listen to you, Mrs. Losi from South Africa, not only because we can learn a lot from South Africa, the good and the bad on how to move beyond the we and the you, but also, based on your journey and your professional career. So how do we shape this common future? Because I stopped you at the first point, but it would also be great to take the perspective that you have heard, that have been shared here.
Thank you again. I think I just want to part ways by saying that for us to shape the common future, we must continue formalizing the partnerships with tangible targets and time frames and accountability. And also, we must be able to link the work that we do with bread and butter issues for workers. And if we are then to be able to measure what we agree on, as I've said earlier on, it will be whether, and I want to be practical on the ground here with the ordinary people, whether a woman selling goods in the informal economy has social protection in terms of the trade agreements that we reach. Whether a young person in the rural community is able to have a decent job that is close to home, does not have to migrate within even the country or a province. Whether a mine worker sees our strategic minerals creating industries and not just exports. And whether a farm worker shares in the value of what they produce. And whether every worker across the value chains, from the mines to the manufacturing factories, the farms, the ports, the shop floor, has dignity, has fair wages, and also there's hope for the next generation. And I think if we are to measure what we agree in is a journey that we must travel together in shaping our common future, we must be able to respond to these issues. For me, this is the common future that we should shape together, one that is built on solidarity, that is shared, that has shared prosperity, and also that has justice for all our people. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So make it tangible. Look at the daily reality, the livelihoods beyond the beautiful words. I think this is a good opportunity to listen to you, the audience. Do you have a question or a contribution? For now, I'd like to see who is interested to contribute something. Please raise your hand. I see one person there. The younger people are also encouraged. I see Amani from the Netherlands, for instance. Many others also from the Netherlands, the young think tank. Anyone who has a contribution, a reflection, or question? I already see someone there. Please, could you tell us who you are and what's your addition or question?
Thank you so much. My name is Michael Dewanu. I work with the public broadcaster, Ghana Broadcasting Corporation in Ghana. I'm an AU Media Fellow, and we are here at Brussels to study how the EU and the AU partnership has been growing over the years. And I happened to register for this particular occasion, and I'm excited to have participated in the first session and also to conclude. And I'm also happy to see the General Secretary of the ruling party, NDC, a great guy in Ghana. Thank you so much, sir. And so my question has to do with in March, I attended the Biashara Africa, and I saw quite a number of young Africans who are innovative entrepreneurs and trying to trade among themselves here in Africa. I had interaction with some of them who are also excited to export their goods to Europe, but unfortunately the trade restrictions in Europe is making it difficult for them to trade in Europe. But here comes China with a zero tariff, and they are excited to export to China. What is Europe doing to make sure that they relax some of this restriction so that Africa can also export their product into Europe and thereby creating more young African entrepreneurs? Thank you.
Thank you very much. Udo, I'm sorry I have to give you the floor for now. I know you will have a closing remark, but could you maybe tell us how is this discussion taking place within within your party, but also here in Europe in general, because it's one of the headache for quite a long time.
Thank you very much, and thanks for our friends, the African journalists that have joined us during the week. It was amazing to see you, to listen to you. We met already on Monday when we laid out the program to journalists in Brussels and with our African guests. So I got to know Michael and his colleagues already. And the answer is the following, the honest answer, because we never lie to each other. The time is too short to bypass truth. So we're always very honest with each other. Europe is a battleground on the issue of migration, as you know, because especially the right wing try permanently to find scapegoats for the shortcomings of the development in European societies. There is pressure, there is huge inequality also in European societies, not only in the international agenda, not only in African societies. There is big injustice in European societies as well. And the transformation we are in at the very moment, the industrial, environmental challenges, are perhaps the biggest transformation during the last 200 years, since industrialization started. Lots of people are dequalified. Lots of people are getting unemployed. Lots of people do not know where their place is in society. And for the first time, many, especially also of the young generation, have the impression in Europe, well, we are the first generation that cannot take for granted that we will have a better life that our parents and grandparents had. And that is abused by the international right wing who have huge funds. Let me say it's also abused by Putin from both sides, from Trump as well as from Putin. They try to destroy the European Union as an international actor. Because as soon as we present our values on the international agenda, as soon as we try to materialize what we are talking about here, tax the rich, tax the digital companies, the high-tech companies, you see what is going to happen. We get a full aggressive reaction from the White House. And that is also why years and years ago, they put a lot of money on the Brexit agitation, because they wanted already to kick off the UK. Today, the people in the UK know it was a mistake because they are suffering. But they cannot swallow a strong European Union in a world where we can co-decide the rules of trade, the rules of our environment, the rules of our international relationships. And in this situation, non-regulated migration is interpreted also by working class people, I would say wrongly, but it's going on. There are campaigns for that, as a threat.
Udo,
right wing are abusing that.
For my understanding, to make it sharp on, it was about trade.
Yeah, let me come. Trade is movement of free capital, movement of goods, movement of services, but especially movement of people. And that was touched upon by Marco already. And I come to trade. What the progressives need to learn, and that is a very courageous exercise, is to defend free movement as a precondition of our collective survival. And Marco is a frontrunner for us. Marco was touching on that issue because he is leading us on the respective dossiers in the House. And this is a tough fight. So we want to have regular migration. We want to open the door for people to work with us, for have an open exchange. And that enables us also, and then I come to trade, to exchange of goods and services. Yes, we need to re-regulate, because only an idiot can believe that European economy is going to flourish in the midterm by exporting to countries and never buying back more sophisticated products. The idea to exploit minerals, raw minerals from southern countries, whether that is Latin America, Asia or Africa, to process them here and then afterwards to export it with profits to your countries is crazy. It's crazy in the short term, it's crazy in the midterm, and it's crazy in the long term. So to re-regulate trade means to enable exactly what Fifi is arguing for, what Zingi is arguing for, that we need to have added value, homegrown industries in those countries where we have young talents interested to get a decent job. And then Europe has to open the corridors for people, goods and services, which are high-level products and elaborated in our partner country. And that is the story to be learned. But it needs courageous actors to put it on the agenda and to make it real. Sorry for being a bit lengthy, but it has to be seen in a specific context of our battlefield in Europe.
I'll try to make sure that I synthesize you. The point is, my understanding is Europe is doing nothing to answer his question at the moment, and you explain it. It's due to, among other internal friction, the rise of far right, the migration, how it's being used. Is that a good understanding of you? What you shared with us?
I would
on why Europe
I would reject that, because you cannot say Europe is doing nothing. We are permanently doing bilateral trade agreements. And that is necessary to be done. Look at Mark Carney and his intervention in Davos. The mid-powers have to associate to deal with each other. Europe never ever has been so active as in the very moment to do bilateral trade agreements. The fight is, how do they look like? Do they really open the chances of what we are talking here about, or are they what you would perhaps call extractive concepts? Yeah? So we are proactive, a lot of things are happening, but I wanted to showcase it's a battleground with pros and cons, and with things that are sometimes contradictory, and we are on the one side and others are on the other side.
And maybe it's a good moment for you, sir, Mr. Kwetey, to actually go a bit further on this, because the relationship between Europe and Africa has been changing. As the journalist from Ghana mentioned, Africans can also go to China, for instance. So there are more competitions. You know this also in Ghana and your African colleagues. So for the context, I did not mention, I am also a committee member of the Advisory Council of International Affairs in the Netherlands, and we recently published a report on the Global South. And one of the elements is, of course, this idea that the Global South is becoming more, you have more options. And there is a danger that Europe will miss the boat if they don't adjust quickly. So what is your reflection on his question and the reflections provided by Mr. Bullmann?
Yeah, I go back to what I said earlier, that as I mentioned yesterday, Kwame Nkrumah, right from the beginning, said Africa should try to look forward and not necessarily to look to west or the east. And I said what he possibly should have emphasized more is Africa should look within. And I want to re-emphasize that again. It's critical for us as a continent to appreciate that the journey, first and foremost, must be a journey that is starting with us. That we cannot constantly look without, hoping for miracles to come from without. So there is the beginning of the journey that has to be a beginning of an awakening within the continent, of knowing exactly what it is that we have. And that truth has been spoken, that there's a lot that we can do ourselves, starting from the leadership of the continent, but also the citizens of the continent. Because often there's almost like a feeling always that salvation must come from without. So if salvation is not coming from Europe and it's not coming from America, this time around salvation must be coming from China. And so it's the same, it's almost like the same cycle going on, constantly looking without for salvation. And especially to the young generation of Africans, my plea is that don't do what your parents and grandparents have done. First, let's look within. Let's see exactly how we can awaken. And that touches on something my sister from South Africa did say, which is very true, that we need to be fundamentally, at the end of the day, looking at how the direct livelihoods of our people, of our women, of our children can be guaranteed. And I say again that the first step has to be us. There's a lot that we can do that we are not doing. Right from the leadership through the citizens, that we need to be able to do better. Once we do our side, in fact, that awakening by Africa on its own is actually the beginning of the journey. If once we can awaken properly, we place ourselves in a position where we are able to bargain even much better. That we're able to come to the table with far, far more than we are coming to the table with at the minute. So whether we should be looking towards China or we should be into Europe, I think we should first and foremost look at Africa, because the capacity to even trade among ourselves is so massive. I mean, the markets that we have on its own and the barriers that we place on internal trade patterns on our own continent are issues that we need to address. But I do completely appreciate where Udo was coming from in terms of the difficulties that, especially the progressives in Europe are really facing, which is unfortunate because really, sadly, it's all down to fear. The fact that there is literally fear being used as a massive instrument, and whenever fear becomes what I call the prevailing atmosphere, we all naturally go down to the path of least resistance, and we start, as it were, adopting, trying to blame others. Trying to literally look at other people as a problem rather than looking within and seeing the possibilities that we can achieve together. That's why I keep going back to the fact that instead of fear, we should rise above fear and see the capacities that are still not being optimized, especially in Africa. And Europe should be able to appreciate that problems are meant to be resolved, and fear is not a way to be able to resolve those problems. And if Europe is able to, as it were, do much better in that respect, that collaboration with Africa, I think we'll be able to achieve a lot together. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Based on your answer, I actually take 2 points. One, we should reframe your question. So it's not about what is Europe doing, but what are Africans doing, especially when it's come to trade. And also, this point has been made a few points, and it's also to your point, Europe has its internal, conversations. So maybe, look at yourself first, but also relate to that. Focus on this common shared future. Shared experience. I would like to go to Zingiswa Losi. Do you have some last words of wisdom for us on how to move forward?
No, thank you. What I would say is that we need accountable governments. We need ethical business. We need organized labor at the table. We need active citizens, and we need regional cooperation and international solidarity. And I think if we are able to deal with these in a responsible way, where there's policy certainty, where there is long-term investments that are people-centered, where trade unions are able to organize responsibly, we would be able, continue on the path of building and shaping our common future. That would be my last words. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Maybe do you have some words of advice to Europeans when it's come to how to deal with the far right? And this internal division, based on your position? Then they will adopt you. But it's quite expensive. Anyway.
I would say that the Spain declaration should help everybody, because I think that was the agenda that we're dealing with in Barcelona. What is it that we need to do to push back against the far right? It is there. I think Europe has done well in putting us all together and having that discussion, from governments to trade unions.
For the younger following politics, the Spain declaration?
Well, I don't have the declaration with me, but I know that they would have followed it. Of course, you can't have young people that are not following politics. I think they do. The fact that they are here and they're having this discussion in understanding what it means to have the cost of living rising, what it means to be excluded from the mainstream of the economy, what it means for young women to have to prove themselves 100 times that they are capable of leading big industries and even in politics, for them understanding that there are many overlapping barriers that make them to be here and want to have a voice. I don't want to believe that they do not see themselves participating in politics, because politics, it is about the cost of bread. Politics, it is about whether you are able to tomorrow to take your child to school, and politics is about whether you are able to retire in dignity.
Thank you very much. So we have listened. Europe has already the answer. It's just we just need courage to operate. For you, Mr. Kwetey, some last words of wisdom on this common future.
Yeah, let me just again express gratitude for the platform, for the capacity, for the ability to be able to share ideas together. I just want to emphasize again that when we are determined to work together, there is so much more that we can achieve than if we work. Call it alone. That there are solutions, and by no means claim to have all the ideas. But I think, especially for the younger generation, I have a lot of faith that that ability to be able to reach across continents and to be able to work together, finding solutions. I think in that respect, especially Europe, owes it a responsibility to allow the younger generation in Europe to be able to discover Africa more. Africa used to be known as a dark continent, but actually Africa has quite a lot of light that needs to be found. And in finding the light, I do believe that the young generation in Europe would actually fall in love with Africa. And when we are able to understand each other more, especially the younger generation, there's so much more that can be achieved. And that, again, brings me back to what we said earlier, that Africa and Europe share a common future. And together, especially the young people of Europe and Africa, they hold the key to be able to trigger a future that will bring much, much more hope and fulfillment for all of us.
Yes. So, Mr. Bullmann, would you like to have some reflections, or should I give my sentences and give you the last? I think I'll do that because you are the host. And
fine for me, yeah.
Yeah. So it's really a great honor to be facilitating this conversation. I'd like to thank you for having me here, and also, for my guest. I am Congolese and Dutch, and I do think today it has been mentioned the importance of focusing on the lived reality, the importance of having shared experience. I would also like to mention that we should always look beyond the frameworks that are beyond what we are discussing, because what I understood today is also there are powers that have interest in dividing us. So we should find strategies on how, we should find a common enemy, because it's usually invisible. Maybe the far right, that's what I sense, is not the enemy, but a distraction on the conversation that we really need to have, because it's about bread and butter. So who is actually standing in front of the woman in South Africa, the mine worker, to have a livelihood? Is it a far-right politician who is harnessing fear, or maybe a trade deal that looks good on paper but actually making people homeless, making them to leave their house? These are questions, tough questions that we need to ask. It has been raised that we need to look at the younger generation, and I'm looking forward to the screening of the movie People Show later on to continue this conversation. I also see this as an invitation, actually, also, to make a political agenda to encourage this exchange between Africa and Europe, and also use education as a tool. And this education is, of course, not like one line, us going there. It's also an opening to actually learn. And I think this point has been made. Europe, as an aging continent, give yourself the opportunity to listen. And we should not underestimate the importance of exchanging and conversation like this, having honest reflections beyond ChatGPT, Gemini, and all those other powerful tools that actually seems good on paper, but actually dividing us before we realize. Because the truth happens when we find one another in a room and speak truth to one another. So with that note, thank you again. And to the coordinator, our MEP, Udo Bullmann, for you the last, the floor is yours.
So thanks first of all, Kiza, for your excellent moderation. It's a pleasure listening to you. I told you that already bilaterally. Thanks to this great panelists, Zingi and Fifi today, and to all our speakers and guests from the African continent. Let me start perhaps also by thanking all our partner organizations, because the S&D wouldn't have been able to doing that without Solidar, the Friedrich Ebert Foundation, the Dutch FMS, without FABs, and many, many other partners. Let me thank our organizational teams, our communication teams. I named them all already in my introductory remarks yesterday. Great people. And what is not typical for the Brussels ongoings, each and everybody 200% committed to make it a success. Thank you so much, all of you. I'll tell you something what I personally feel. The concept was not to go as an ordinary conference normally goes, policy field by policy field. Normally you go first day energy, second day food, third day you do something on the digital. It's kind of boring. We said, first of all the issues are important, but what we said yesterday at the very beginning, the difference we would like to make is to concentrate on people. People are shaping the world. We know about the power structures. We know about capital interests, but we talk about people, because finally it's people to shape the world. I expected good people to come to our meetings from Brussels as well as from African countries, but I had no clue how many wonderful people would come. Thank you for being with us. And right, my personal impression is it's quite difficult to let you go. Because you gave us a package, I was tempted to say development aid package here in Brussels, which we would like to use. And by saying that in our conversations, which were so rich, which were so fruitful, I thought, well, this is exactly the injection we need to go forward, to renovate our own thinking sometimes, and to get some hope. To get some hope to do it, yes, and this is the film. We can do it. Rightly so, we are looking at that right after. Having said that, we didn't miss to meet the power in Brussels, as you saw. We have powerful people here on the podium. We have a senior guy who is leading his party, a very successful party in Ghana, having been minister so often. We have the leading personality of the South African COSATU. They are powerful people, by far. Yeah, of course they are powerful people. And we met commissioners. The speakers met the most powerful socialist commissioner, Vice President Ribeira. We saw Dan Jørgensen. He is a friend of us, a leading socialist commissioner himself as well. And even if they only have sometimes 30 minutes, 40 minutes, something, believe me, they go enriched because of the communication with you, because you are going and you did already tell them a different story. Normally, they are in the bubble. And if you are in the bubble for the whole week, 24/7, even the good people at a certain stage start to think like the bubble. Yeah? But only if you mean real people like you, they get the chance to readjust their senses, to readjust their political programs, to readjust the way to go, their compass. So I'm pretty sure that they have learned their story like I have learned my story, like we, my colleagues in the European Parliament, my colleagues in the political administration have learned their story by listening to you and by discussing with you, and that is my first point. My second point is I was astonished by the combination of seriousness of our issues. Nothing was flat. No single conversation was meaningless, was flat. Lots of good things have been discussed and moved forward, but it always was carried by a certain lightness. It was not too heavy, too sad, too backward-looking. No, it was carried by hope, by the idea the future could be brighter if only we do a good job. This is a very inspiring feeling I have after the 2 days, and that should not leave us. And this is concentrated in our goal, because at all moments, whatever we raised, whatever kind of difficulty we put on the discussion agenda, we were united by one idea. And Zingi said it all when she mentioned it's about dignity. It's about dignity for the many and not only for the few. This is the program of our political parties. This is the program of our political group in the European Parliament, and this is the way for us to go. And this is our benchmark. And we need to be honest and serious week after week to measure, did we increase, did we improve on this way forward to increase the dignity for the many, or did we fail? And in the very second where we detect that we are going to fail or that we did fail, we have to self-correct ourselves. And we need our friends to tell us about that. So this is one of the important things of our communication. So if we are on the wrong track in our collaboration, we need to know. We need to listen. And we need to have senses. Both sides, by the way, on both sides. Is my second point. Let us reach out, and that is my final point. Don't give up on people. People to people is the thing that we are focusing on. People to people is our strength. We can shape and we can alter power structures. We can shape and we can overcome single-minded business interests by people-to-people communication and building up our collective human strength. I'm totally in that. And that means also that we talk to people who have not yet perhaps the same kind of ideas. Let us talk to people who are in different camps. And let us talk to people with whom we are very familiar, or groups to whom we belong. Faith-based communities, for instance. Because who told you that Christian believers or Muslim believers or people who generally believe in humanity have a destiny to fall victim to the right-wing extremists that permanently create hate between people and people? This is totally wrong, and it's strictly against all the big narratives of humankind. In no great book of humanity, it's going about hate. It's going about love, collaboration, and building the strength to shape the future together. So we need to reach out. In a situation where our political parties, the progressive political parties in Europe, are very often defeated, we need to re-detect the chances of a more far-reaching narrative, of a broader narrative. And here we, as a European, as a humble guy from a region in Germany, province in Germany, who feels inspired by this many cosmopolitan minds here and the podium and these 2 days, I can only tell you the progressive movements in Europe feel inspired by the strength of the young generation in the South. And this is one element why we are so grateful that you were coming to us. And we very much hope that we can stick together and do something great. Thank you so much for being with us.
Yeah, that was it. Time for a movie and reflect a bit or feel.